Hey crafty friends, Kim from Stamping Imperfection. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm actually not in my craft room today. I'm actually in a B&B in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm spending a few weeks here to take care of my new little granddaughter while my daughter and her husband have to go back to work. So I'm enjoying it very much, and I'm kind of making do with only a few things. So one of the things I brought with me is I brought my watercolor pencils. Watercolor pencils are super easy to travel with. I have this little case here, and my watercolor pencils and everything I need to do my watercoloring fits in this case. So it's very nice. The only thing I need to add, of course, is watercolor paper, and even these pencil boxes fit inside here, believe it or not, and some stamps and memento ink and some clear blocks. So today I thought I would share the easiest way to put color on your paper, like to color an image using watercolor pencils. And Stampin' Up is coming out, or just came out, with a great watercolor kit that I was so excited about. I ordered 2 of them, and it's got a coloring book with 24 pages. There are 12 different designs, 2 each of 12 different designs. They've got 8 watercolor pencils, and they've got a watercolor brush in there. And I think, what a great kit. But I was thinking that maybe you'd like to try watercoloring, but you haven't really done it before. So let me share a couple of techniques. And if you're traveling, this is the easiest thing to travel with. I'm not kidding. So, you just need a few supplies. So let's talk about what some of those supplies are. And before I do that though, I need to do my stamping, because I have to let the memento ink dry. Now you want to use memento. On the back it even says it says when dry, stamped impressions are water resistant. So you need to give it time to dry. And I thought I would use this Happy Hibiscus, because if you bought this Happy Hibiscus set, then it's a 2-step stamp set, which I love the 2-step stamp sets. I think Stampin' Up does such a nice job with them, and I think this is a pretty fabulous one. But it comes as a bundle, or you can purchase it as a bundle, with a hybrid embossing folder and dies. And I did get the whole kit and caboodle, but I've just wanted to play with the stamps. Now the one drawback of this is the cluster that actually uses the die and the hybrid folder together. And they did this, they connected all 3 of these. So when I stamp them, I'm not super fond of how they're arranged. So I'm going to stamp them, and then I'm going to, when I'm done coloring them in, I'll die cut them out with my dies. And I did travel with my cut and emboss machine, believe it or not, and all my ink pads too. So, oops, I just made a huge mess. I'm not a huge fan of felt ink pads anymore. Ever since Stampin' Up went to the, ever since they went to the foam ink pads, I feel totally spoiled by those, because I love stamping with them. So I'm just going to clean this up. This is the chamois that came with my glass mat. I love this glass mat. I think it's beautiful to craft on. So I'm going to just kind of do this down here. And this is watercolor paper. It happens to be cold press watercolor paper, and I think it's 140 grams, or it's 300 grams. It's 140 pound paper. And I looked for hot press because I wanted something smoother. I wanted the smoothest watercolor paper, but I could not find it. I forgot to pack my Stampin' Up watercolor paper, so I had to go to a local craft store and get the paper. So there we go. So that's what I'm going to get out of that. I'm going to clean this off while the rest of that ink is still wet. And I'm going to try to, like, there's hi-hats in this room. This is a very bright room, I might add. So I'm going to let this dry while I just go through the rest of the supplies. Oh, and I also want to stamp a few of these leaves. I'm going to stamp a few of each size. Alright, so besides the paper and the ink and the stamps, I have a paper towel. Super simple thing. I usually have a paper towel in here with me, and of course I have my colored pencils. I actually keep my colored pencils in these boxes, but I've been using them, so most of the colors are out. Might as well pull all the rest out too, right? But I like to refer to what colors I have on the back, and I did create for myself, I did create a swatch, and I'm going to use the technique that I did to create the swatch on the flowers today. So I can see the colors, and I can see what they look like without water added and what they look like with water added, and I find this super useful. And you can see I labeled the colors so I don't have to look them up, and I like having this. I love having this to refer to. It helps me choose my colors. Plus I have the boxes which have the colors on the back, but the thing about the boxes is that these colors aren't necessarily the actual color. I mean, look at, this is Cherry Cobbler. This is what my Cherry Cobbler pencil looks like. So Flirty Flamingo is here. This is what Flirty Flamingo looks like. So always create a swatch. When you get new mediums that will add color or texture, create swatches so you have something to refer back to. It's like embossing folders. It's nice to actually create swatches of embossing folders also. So I'm going to just contain these in my little thing here. When I'm done using them, they'll all go back in the box, and the boxes fit nicely in here. I also brought some masking tape for different techniques. I've got Wink of Stella, my clear Wink of Stella. I've got a blender pen. I've got a basic black Stampin' Up marker. I've got I've got 3 different kinds of erasers in here. My favorite one is always going to be the high polymer white erasers. The kneadable gum eraser is really nice for taking off the pencil color if you have it someplace you don't want to. I also have a pencil sharpener. Like, none of these are expensive things. Like, these are all pretty inexpensive things. So, like, those are the tools. I also have, I have my white gel pen, so I have that in there. And then I have one of the Stampin' Spritzers with water in it. And I have a set of the 3 different water painters. That's what they're calling them now. I tend to call them aqua painters because that's what the original ones that Stampin' Up! Carried were called. I have this wide brush one. I love this for doing watercolor wash techniques. Then I have the larger round brush. That's the one I use the most. And then I have the smaller round brush. These all came as a set of 3 from Stampin' Up! I have them filled with water, and you can see the water line doesn't go all the way to the top. I leave a little bubble of air. That seems to help a little bit. And I've been doing a lot of watercoloring, and this is how much water I've used in this brush. You can see I've hardly used any water at all, and I've spent a couple days doing watercolor projects. One of the projects that I did was I just stamped those same hibiscus flowers, and then I stamped the insides with the the second level stamps to add the color. I stamped the leaves, and then I stamped those, of course, with the color stamp. And then I created this watercolor wash around them. And it's one of my favorite techniques to do when I'm doing floral images. But here you can see what it would look like if you just used that stamp as is without cutting them out. I kind of added a leaf in the middle there to kind of camouflage the fact that there was a big space between the flowers. And I will probably make a couple cards out of this, but I'm having a lot of fun actually playing with the different techniques. I decided to use a combination of reds and pinks. I pulled out Cherry Cobbler, Melon Mambo, Real Red, and Fresh Freesia. I also like a little yellow in my flowers, especially with reds, so I pulled out Crushed Curry. Now the easiest way to add color to your images is to just put the color on. A couple of things. I was taught actually to add the color with the side of my pencil. In fact, I think you can almost see how flat, maybe not, the side of the pencil is, because that's how I use it. And I feel like once the side flattens a little like that, it gets easier to actually add the color. I'm holding it sort of in the center of the pencil, not way down here. I don't want to put any like harsh lines because those don't come out, especially if they're thicker. And like I can't take my water painter and get those out. So I'm just gonna very lightly, I'm just gonna add a layer of light Fresh Freesia. And you can scribble in all directions if you want to, because it won't matter. You just want to fill in all the spots. And if you don't get close enough to the edges, don't worry about it, because you can spread your ink around. And we can add more. Like if I want it a little darker, I'll make it a little darker. But I'd like to add a combination of colors, because this will be pretty, but by adding layers of color, I feel like you actually get really beautiful results. Now with my water painter, I'm just going to push and add some water, and that wets the brush tip, and hopefully all the black ink that got on my water painter dried also. So I want this to be wet. And if you want, you can also take a little water from your spritzer and make that really wet. I want my brush wet, but I don't want it dripping. So, and I've done this technique on Whisper White. As long as you're not adding too much water, it actually, it'll warp the Whisper White a little, but you can flatten it. And I usually flatten it by just letting it sit on my table with my clear blocks. I'll just pile my clear blocks on top of it. You could pile a big book on top of it, and you can also run it through your Big Shot using the same sandwich as you would if you were die cutting. The only thing I recommend doing is putting a piece of copy paper over the top of your image, so that you don't get any lines from your cutting plate, because the cutting plate lines can transfer, especially the older your plates are. They can transfer to your project. So, and notice I'm just kind of like sweeping this across, and if I need more water, I'll go back and pick up some more water. But my brush was wet enough that I got the whole thing done there. And can you see how nice and smooth that looks? Isn't that pretty? Like, that looks pretty just like that. And you could leave it like that. Like, that could be your watercoloring. You could add whatever color you wanted. And the thing I like about doing watercoloring, whether I'm using paints or the inks, Stampin' Up! Inks or re-inkers, or my colored pencils or pastels, whatever, You can also mix your colors so you can get some interesting colors. So I'm going to give this a minute to dry. I'm going to go ahead and color this next one, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I definitely want to add some shading to show that those petals are folded over and there's some shadows there. So you can go add a second layer of that color around those shaded bits. I'm just going around the edges of them. And I'm not pressing down hard again. I want to be able to like get those lines, get the pencil lines out of there, and I want to blend it so it looks like a smooth transition of color. But I'll just put a slightly darker layer around those folded bits. And you can put a slightly darker layer behind them on the other petal also, because those are the spots you're going to get some shadows. And you can also add some little spots like that up here too. That was a little harsh. I don't know if I'll get that pencil line cleaned out. We'll see. But in these little spots too, you can make it look like it's, you know, got a little dimple in it by just making it a little darker. And the artist has shown us where that is by leaving gaps in the lines. Okay, so I'm going to just wet my brush again, and then I'm just going to do the same thing. And where I've added the darker spots, I'm just going to wiggle my brush, and you can actually like push the color around too. So like you can actually sort of push that color where you want it with water. And it takes, I think watercolor is a technique that definitely takes practice. It's like using your blendabilities. Like you have to practice. Like my sister was complaining last night that she wasn't very good at the blendabilities, but you're not going to pick them up and be good at it. You have to actually practice, and that means, you know, wasting some paper and some ink until you do get good at it. And taking classes, I think taking classes makes a huge difference. Watch a lot of videos. I mean, you don't have to pay for classes. You can take free classes. Lots of people like me put videos up, and I found it helpful to watch a lot of different people because everybody's got a slightly different technique, and do what works for you. You know, like you'll find something somebody does that, and you try it and it works so well, but you know, it might just be one person. So watch a bunch of videos. Don't limit yourself. Oops, I put too much water there. I kind of washed that away. Okay, now I want to show you, and I always wipe my brush off like that just to clean it off. I want to show you the difference between these two. And this may actually be too subtle because I've only got one layer on here. But this is the one that I've done a little bit of shading on. And can you see some of the darker spots there? Like you're starting to see that you can add some dimension and texture to your florals just by adding some details. Now notice that I started with the lightest color for these, and I'm going to build by adding my darker colors on top. Okay, and let's do this one and get the little one done. So the point of the water painter is really to smooth out those pencil lines. If you like the pencil lines, you can leave those in. Like sometimes you want that texture to show. Like it depends on the look you're going for. So, alright, so I've done those. This one feels pretty dry. I think I'm going to try the Melon Mambo. I feel like I haven't used this color too much. And I'm just going to add some dark spots here where the artist has clearly shown that it's folding over along the edges of the petals. You can try some of these little, it's almost like a little triangle where it looks like it might be folded over. And I definitely like it toward the bottom of the flowers. But again, I'm not pushing down hard. This is just a darker color. Because I don't want to create big divots of color that I can't like smooth out. So I'm just going along the edges there. And you stop whenever you feel like you've got enough color on your flower. And when you're doing the darker color, like I just went out of the lines, I could sort of like use the water to push the color back into the flower and to pick it up. And notice I keep going back to my paper towel and wiping off the excess so I don't get too much of that dark color spread around. And you can sort of lift some of the color off with your wet brush if you get more than you'd like someplace. It's harder to remove color than it is to add it, so you want to be careful. I'm just kind of using this scribbling motion to kind of blend the lines so I don't have harsh lines. Like sometimes you want that watercolor look, which is the lines. Like there's sometimes, especially when I'm using inks, I want that. Like I want that look. Okay, and I always let one layer dry before I move on to the next layer. And I sometimes feel like, actually a lot of times I feel like leaving some white in there actually helps give it a little bit more like dimension, and I always like the way that looks. And you also might decide you don't want to like wash away some of the dark color. You might want that like pencil line of shadow that you put in there to remain without being washed away. and just leave it. You don't have to go over it with a water pencil. Like, I think the whole point of playing a little bit is figuring out what's working for you and what looks you like. And I highly recommend, if you have some crappy paper, if you have some junky white paper in your stash, use that to practice on. So you're not using your favorite paper to practice on. Just keep in mind that, like, when you're practicing on paper that you don't like to start with, you might not get the results that you get on better paper. Like, that's one of the things I learned, that it does take better paper to get better results. And the people who are getting beautiful results are spending the money on expensive paper, or the papers that they love or that they get good results on. And one of the things I actually really like, especially like with the alcohol marker coloring with the Stampin' Blends, like, I think the point of like blending colors together is to get some like darker and lighter shades in there, and just so it's not a flat color. Like, I think I really like that look. There we go. So, like, you don't have this flat color. Hopefully you can see that it's so bright in here. It's hard to tell if the camera's actually picking up the variation in color. So now I want to take a little bit of yellow, and I think I'll start with this one. Just add a little yellow in. I don't know why I love it so much. I feel like there's a lot of yellow in flowers in nature. Let's add it to this one. This one's not quite dry yet. And I don't want it to have the paper pill. Like, actually, I really like it when it's on the tips. So I'm going to add some yellow on the tips. Or parts of the tips. And I like to let it dry between layers so I don't get pilling. Like, I definitely find pilling to be a problem, even with watercolor paper. This one, I'm just going to put some yellow in the middle. And I'm going to pull out this one's Pecan Pie, and I'll just add some spots of brown around the outside. And I'm not going to mix those in or anything. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to leave those. I'm going to move on to the, I'm going to let those dry. I can always play with them more if I want to when they're dry, because I feel like I want to add some dark spots back into that one. So I'm going to add some garden green. add a little bit of Granny Apple Green. This one really needs to be sharpened. Mixing the colors together, and I'm mixing them before I'm adding my water. And I am also going to add a little bit of that yellow, that crushed curry, in So my absolute best advice for you is to play, like, make your swatches with your pencils, and I'll show you how I did the swatches. I do have a pencil, watercoloring pencil technique class coming out soon. Here's how I did the swatches. I just colored like this, and then I just took a water brush and went over part of it. And then I labeled the color underneath. That's how I did the swatches. Okay, so I've got all of those done. I'm going to let everything dry, and then I'm going to cut it out. So I have all my pieces cut, and I decided I wanted to do a little watercolor wash, and I thought I would do it by creating a palette. So I've got a piece of scrap paper here, and I'm using my Balmy Blue, and I'm just scribbling it pretty hard. I want to get a lot of color down there, and I'm going to take my big flat brush. This is my favorite brush to use with watercolor washes, and I've got a piece of just plain Whisper White cut at 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm creating a little palette here by just mixing some water there, and I'm just going to brush it across my paper. And I'm not trying to get it to be like even looking or anything like that. I just want this simple watercolor wash. That's all. And I do want a little of it to show down here. And I'm okay with the lines. I love it. So I've created a little palette, made it very watery, and then just brush it across my paper. Now I'm going to leave it to dry. I'm going to clean off my brush here, and I'm going to let it dry, and I'm going to put some blocks on top of it so it flattens it out when it is dry, and then I will be back to put my card together. So I did my wash, I let it dry, and then I put these clear blocks on it, and they've actually been there all day because I spent the afternoon taking care of my sweet little granddaughter, who is such a delightful little baby. So I'm ready to put my card together now. I've got a card base. This is cut at 5 1/2 by 8 1/2. I scored and folded at 4 1/4. So now I can lift these off, And you can see it's pretty flat, so that's a great thing. And I do have a bag of adhesives here, so let me grab that. And I'm going to use my favorite adhesive, this Tombow glue. I really like this glue. One of these containers will last a couple of months, and I craft every day. Like, I make cards or scrapbook pages or something every single day, so I'm doing a lot there. And I just feel like they last forever. And they are a little messy, but I think the more you use them, the better you get at using them. Now, I could have put a pretty piece of colored cardstock underneath here, and I might have done that if all of my pretty colored cardstock wasn't packed in a box. But it's all packed in a box. And I'm just going to leave it that way for now. I want to grab some Stampin' Dimensionals. Okay. And I want to put those on the back of this. So I'm going to put a couple of dimensionals on the back of the largest flower. I'm not doing it right at the edges because I definitely want to tuck the other flowers and leaves underneath these. So I'm just going to put this down here and see if I'm going to be able to tuck a couple of these longer leaves under the end here. It looks like I will. So I think I'll also do a dimensional on the back of each of these. I always think the fun part is putting all the pretty stuff you make onto the card that you are putting together. Let's see. Maybe I'll put one of the smaller ones down there, huh? I always feel like two of the larger ones should be here. There we go. And I want this one up here. Okay, and we'll tuck this guy under here, and let's do a couple of these. And I do want to have something there, and I've got my three smaller ones. And I do have a package of smaller dimensionals, because it's nice Stampin' Up! Carries their Stampin' Dimensionals in two different sizes. Oh, goodness gracious. I can't keep a hold of this one. I was just trying to figure out which end is which here. And there we go. And then I'll put one up here. And I still have this smaller flower, but I'm not sure. I guess I could tuck that in there just to give a bigger cluster. And I do really like the green on here, though. I think that's actually really nice. So I can tuck this little guy under right there, and I have a nice little cluster, and there we go, just like that. And I need a sentiment now. So on this stamp set I have congratulations, you make me smile, thanks for being so kind. And I'm noticing this other stamp here too, these little hash marks. And I'm thinking I would not hate to put some of these in here. I'm going to just peel this guy off here, and I'd love to put some of those on. Let's see, now I just have to decide on a color. I pulled out my basic beige. I have hardly used this, and I do want what I'm about to do to be kind of subtle. I love it when they put stamps like this in a stamp set though. I'm not gonna lie. I think it does a nice job of like completing the set. Let's see if I can pull this one off. Put that back, and I got a little smudge there, and I can maybe put some over here, and maybe even some down there. So I've got some all around here, and I kind of like the look. So that was basic beige. It's got a little bit of a green tint to it, but I think that's okay. I think I like this. Alright, now I want to do a sentiment, and I don't love any of the sentiments here. Let me see what else I have with me. Hooray, it's your day. This would make a pretty... oh, look at this. I didn't even put my stickers on these. I've been using these without the stickers, although I do have the hello sticker on. I love this stamp set. This is the Irresistible Blooms. I've used this quite a bit. And I do like that. And I think I'm going to go with black here. Let's hope this comes out. So I'm just holding it for a minute, and it came out nice and dark. I like that. And I do want to put this little guy back in, right here, just like that. And one other little touch I like to add is I really like some white gel pen details. So I travel with a white gel pen. So I do want to put some white pen details here, and I definitely want to put some white gel pen details in the middle of all these. So I'll add a few of these around here just to kind of highlight the center. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just put a bunch of these little white dots. And, you know, they're pretty subtle, but I feel like it highlights it a little bit more. And I would love some embellishments, but I don't see that I brought any embellishments in here. So I'm going to call it a day here, but before I mail this out, I will definitely add some embellishments here. And I think I'm done with it. So that is another hibiscus card. This is the Happy Hibiscus set, and I used just the stamp, and I didn't even use the dies because they're still in the back of my car in the craft bin that I packed, and so I fussy cut all of these out. And you can see, like today my sister was telling me that she loved the card I made with Happy Hibiscus, which is on my blog, my Facebook page Stamping Imperfection, and my Instagram Stamping_Imperfection. And my blog, of course, is stampingimperfection.com. So you can see two other cards that I created with this particular stamp set. And I loved the cards that I made. But I did use the one that she particularly liked. I had used the 3D embossing folder and die cut out these three, and then I created some leaves, and I just did the second gen stamping, or not second gen, but the two-step stamping. I added the colors with these solid stamps that actually color in the leaves and all three florals, and it was a very pretty card. But actually, I did the two-step stamping on the leaves. I did not do the two-step stamping on the florals. Instead of that, because when you use the hybrid embossing folder with the dies, these get so much texture and dimension. They're gorgeous. They're embossed and they're cut out, so you get three separate flowers when you do that. So I was able to make a little cluster out of them, and I had die cut them on white paper, so I took a dauber. Actually, I took a couple daubers and added some, I think I added Calypso Coral, I added some Daffodil Delight, and I just brushed the dauber very gently over the top to get some color on there, and it was gorgeous. Like, they were beautiful. But she said that, she didn't want to purchase this bundle because she didn't have any ideas for how to use it without that embossing folder, like just to stamp it and use it. So I wanted to share a card today to show you that you can actually make beautiful cards without that embossing folder. And I used my pencils, and like you've already seen that when I travel with my pencils, besides a little bit of watercolor paper, this is all that is required. All my supplies for watercoloring fit in here, and it's wonderful. So I like to travel with it. But of all the coloring things you can purchase, the watercolor pencils are pretty inexpensive and pretty cost effective. And pencils last a long time. Even if you use them all the time, you're going to get a lot of coloring projects out of those pencils. And I just showed you two techniques here today. Technically I showed you three, because I showed you how to actually just get basic color on. Then I showed you how I highlight it by doing another layer with a darker pencil. Actually, the third technique was mixing the colors together, because I love the way this one looks with the mixture of colors. This one I did more highlighting, or not highlighting, but more shadows on there, and I think it gives the flower a lot of depth when you look at it. This one I didn't get as much of the depth in there, but I love the color mixing, and I did color mixing on the leaves. Then the fourth technique I showed you was the watercolor wash in the background, and I mean, that card came out, like, I love this card. I will be happy to send this to someone who will enjoy it, and so I can't wait to share that. So I hope you like it. I would love to know what you think. I do think the card needs some embellishments because every card needs a little bit of bling, but all in all, I'm happy with it. And you know, if you're looking for an inexpensive way to color in outline, I call these outline stamps, then watercolor pencils are it. The only other thing you have to have is the water painters. Now, if you don't want to invest in the water painters, which aren't really very expensive, and the original water painter that I bought at Stampin' Up in like 2010, I still use. It's not one of these three because they have changed their water painters, but I still have the original water painter. And you really, you know, buy one set of three and you've got three different size paint brushes. And I have a set of three actual paint brushes that I purchased to do watercoloring. I happen to really love the Princeton brand of brushes, but I have a flat brush, I have a size 6 round brush, and I have a size 2 round brush. It's essentially what I have with these watercolor painters. And let me just put this back on this one goes on there here. Let me put these back on very carefully because I'm traveling and I don't want to damage my brushes. But you know, these will last a long time. So you could go to the craft store and get some paintbrushes. But what I like about these is I fill them with water. Like the tops just screw off. You fill it with water, then you screw it back together, and you want to do this so that it's on tight, but I always go in the wrong direction because I just feel like the direction that I have to unscrew it and then screw it back together is opposite of what is intuitive to my brain. But now I have my water with me, so I could actually I take this stuff, and a pencil sharpener. You do want to get a pencil sharpener. But I could actually take this stuff with me if my kids were at soccer practice or band practice or drama club, and if I have to sit and wait for them, then this is it. This is all I need. I don't have to have any of these things, although these are useful tools for crafting with anyway. I don't need to have this. It is nice to have the extra source. The other thing that I do think you need to absolutely tuck in here, and I've dropped mine, is a paper towel. You need a paper towel or a microfiber cloth or something like that. But with the pencils, this is it. And of course your paper. And you can see I used Whisper White for this piece right here, and I still did a watercolor wash because I'm not using a ton of water. Now, if you're watercoloring with your inks or your re-inkers, then you need thicker paper because it's really going to warp, because with the inks and the re-inkers you definitely will use more water. You're going to get more liquid on your paper. So not only like the benefit of having the watercolor pencils, first of all, for me is they're the most cost-effective way to get really pretty color on my cards and on my projects, and they're really easy to travel with. So if I have to go someplace and sit for a while waiting for someone, or I'm on a plane, you could pull this out and do it, like, you know what I mean? Like, you could do this in all kinds of places. If you just wanted to go to the beach for the afternoon, you could do some watercoloring at the beach. So easy to travel with. They don't take up a lot of space, and I feel like the results are really pretty. So I hope you like this. I would love to know what you think, and I just want to encourage you to try the watercolor pencils and the water painters and see. I would love to know what you think of it, so let me know. And there you go. I will have more watercolor pencil classes on my YouTube channel, and in fact I will share some of these in a technique video so that I can add them to my technique album that I'm making. I have a technique album that I'm making, and I've been sharing all of the printables for free. So if you go to my blog at stampingimperfection.com and look at the techniques for the technique tutorials for the technique album 2024, then you're going to see several videos, and I've got over 30 techniques, card making techniques. I think I might have 35 or 36 there so far, and there's printables for all of those, and you can see how I'm making my technique album. But my watercolor pencil stuff will be the next thing that I add to that. So there's 4 techniques here today. So thanks for watching, friends. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, friends. I would love it if you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. Also, I would love to be your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, so if you would like to purchase any of the supplies you saw today, you can actually do that at shopwithkim.net. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you find time to do a little creative crafting today. Thanks for watching.